Hey y'all, welcome back. We have another location review and reflection for y'all today, and we are talking about Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. If you've been following us for a while, you know that we are so in love with Rio. So if this one sounds a little bit biased, it is. Deal with it.
It's definitely biased.
So just like all of our other location reviews, we have set criteria that we go through. Those are climate, transportation, infrastructure, family friendliness, general vibe check, and cost of living. So we're going to break this down for you from our experience. We spent a few months living in Rio last year, and we'll likely be back soon.
Yes.
Yes. How soon? Tomorrow?
That's not, don't put me on the spot. Don't.
All right, so we will go ahead and begin with climate.
So we got to Rio de Janeiro in February of last year. So right after their summer, I guess coming out of summer, and it was hot, obviously. And, it was probably about 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit every day.
Yeah.
You'll be sweating during the middle of the day, yes. But it's Rio de Janeiro. It's a beach city. I mean, you go there for the climate, for the heat. So you should expect to be packing shorts, tank tops, t-shirts, flip-flops, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yes, it is super hot. Fortunately, though, the ocean is right there for you to be able to cool off. And also, there are a lot of big, lush trees and amazing vegetation in Rio. So a lot of the sidewalks are going to be shaded. A lot of places in the city are going to be shaded. And then there are also tall buildings, which is nice because you're not just like baking right out in the sun. But I think the biggest standout for Rio is literally just like the scenery. It's just this gorgeous, gorgeous beach and then these gorgeous, gorgeous mountains and this gorgeous, gorgeous city. It's absolutely amazing. And again, the vegetation, the fruit, the trees, it's absolutely magnificent. Again, it's sounding biased. It is biased. Deal with it. But yeah, that heat. If you're not a fan of heat, I would just find somewhere else pretty, to be honestly.
Yeah. So because Rio is a tropical destination, obviously there's going to be wildlife, bugs, animals, stuff like that. So the only issue that we had was mosquitoes, which again, I think as long as you acclimatize to it, you get an accommodation that is maybe mosquito proofed and you wear bug spray. That's the only thing that actually worked for us to get around it. Running the AC actually really helped too.
I don't like the cold.
If you are turning that AC off, the mosquitoes are going to get right into your bedrooms, bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. They love the moisture, but obviously it's tropical, so there were mosquitoes. We did see a couple like little roaches here and there, but it was not anything worse than Atlanta. So, again, it's tropical, so yeah, there's going to be some insects here and there, but nothing unheard of. Like it was good for us, and we're not bug people at all.
Yeah, it's not Australia. The spiders aren't going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay, next thing is transportation. I was impressed with getting around Rio in general for several reasons. We did take the train. The train is super clean. It's amazing. It's easy to navigate. The train was fantastic. Also, Rio has a great bike culture. So we were constantly seeing people going back and forth on bikes. They had kid seats on the back. We saw stores that were selling like really nice bicycles, electric bikes. That just blew me away. I think it's probably the most like bike friendly place we've ever been.
Yeah, great sidewalks for walking. It's very flat, at least in the areas in Zona Sul. I think even the North Zone is still very flat. So getting around is not an issue at all. There's also Uber and I think another taxi service like Uber. Mm-hmm. And then there's just general taxis as well. So we used all of them and had no issues getting around. And when I tell you the train in Rio is on point, like we can take the train from one side of the city to the other. The buses and trains were on time. Like we had no issues getting around on foot or by train.
Yeah, it was super easy and also super affordable. I think getting around Rio de Janeiro is just, again, chef's kiss. Whoever planned Rio, good on you. So the next thing is infrastructure. And by infrastructure, we really just mean your Wi-Fi, your roads, hospitals, schools, all of that good stuff that kind of like makes a place livable. So the infrastructure in Rio is really, really great, right? We just talked about transportation. We went and looked at a few schools. So they have a large selection of bilingual schools, of international schools. Those are all over the place. Getting around is simple. I don't think we had any trouble with the Wi-Fi.
No, not
Yeah,
at all.
there wasn't any trouble with the Wi-Fi. We worked while we were down there. The one thing I will say, and we noticed this when looking at accommodations, is that a lot of them are older. And the ones that are like very fresh and very new tend to be pretty expensive. We'll get to that in cost of living. But I think because of the climate, you have anywhere like I'm from Florida personally, so you know that like saltwater air and humidity will kind of do it to like the outside of a building. We did run into like a little bit of that, knowing that a couple structures could use like a little pressure washing or something, a little paint peeling, but it kind of just adds to the charm of the city, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. There are, some rough areas of Rio de Janeiro. You'll see them on the way from the airport. The favela is right there, very much like walking distance from the tourist zones. Nothing wrong with living in a favela. Some foreigners do, and of course, a lot of locals do as well. But if you are looking for a place to be kind of isolated from local culture or from working class people, Rio may not be the place for you. Rio felt very much like a melting pot of working class and upper class, middle class. Like everybody is kind of living very much amongst each other.
So fortunately, we did not have to make any hospital visits or go to the doctor while we were there, but Rio does have really good healthcare. Part of that, I think, is because of a lot of the medical tourism that you'll see, especially with like cosmetic surgeries. Of course, the BBL is Brazilian. But also just in terms of them having like a universalized healthcare system. So I would say all in all that the infrastructure in Rio is really good. Definitely very livable. We lived there. I didn't have any qualms.
Yeah. As far as schools go, like Courtney said, we did visit one school, and then we met a few foreigners who had their kids in schools there. So they do have a few international schools. I believe there's an American school and some Canadian schools, a few others as well. But getting your kids enrolled in like high quality education, not a problem in Rio at all. All right, family friendliness. This was one of my favorite parts of Rio de Janeiro. I've never experienced a city where I just saw so many kids out in the streets, with a parent, of course, or guardian, but there are parks littered all over the city, as well as the beach. The beach even had a little playground on it as well.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing anything. It was really neat.
Yeah, of Leblon. They like set up a little area with play toys and stuff like that. So the city is very much keeping kids in mind. We found it just amazing. Like our son made friends with so many kids at the parks.
Yeah, they have the parks in the city and then of course at the beach, and then like I mentioned earlier, even like putting your kid on the bicycle is super common. You see families out and about all the time. A lot of the restaurants are set up so that there's like, a little soft play area. You have some like access to that around the restaurant. It was really, really great.
Yeah.
I do know that like, safety is like a big concern that people have when they think about Brazil in general. More on that in the vibe check. But, when you're walking around and you see families and children and parks that are high quality and nice play areas, it just doesn't feel like too much of a thing.
As far as attractions go, there are plenty of tourist attractions for kids and for families as well. So we did Christ the Redeemer, we did the stairs, the scallion, I'm gonna butcher it.
The one from the Snoop Dogg video, y'all know which one.
Yeah, and we did Sugarloaf Mountain as well. Each one of those activities was well suited for kids. I know there's a few others as well, but those are like the major tourist attractions of Rio de Janeiro. We brought our kids to all of them.
Yeah, they had a great time. The kids really enjoyed Rio. Xavier wants to go back. So again, not to be biased, we'll be back soon. We love Rio. Vibe check. So obviously, at this point we love Rio. It passed the vibe check. I do think there are a couple of notes that I have. So one thing to call out about Brazil in general is that just like the US, it has a history of slavery, specifically that like chattel slavery that's specific to the Americas. And because of that, you still do see that same sort of institutionalized racism in Rio and I'm guessing other parts of Brazil as well. So one thing that we did notice is that a lot of nannies or caregivers are going to be a much darker complexion than the people that they're working for. You'll see the same thing in hospitality industry. It's just you're going to get a different shade of the person at the front desk versus the people cleaning your room. That's just a reality of Rio, just like a lot of parts of America.
Yeah. And with that being said, it's probably the first city that we've been to where it felt like there were 50% black people, 50%, white people or lighter skinned Brazilians. And so that does something for you in terms of feeling like you fit into a city. We blended in with a lot of Brazilians in Rio de Janeiro. Our kids, would have played with kids that are like of all different skin shades at the park. So it just felt really good to be around so many melanated people and just so much diversity in the country, in the city.
Yeah, it is incredibly diverse. And I think that's what's amazing is because of the unique like cultural and phenotypical and racial makeup of Rio, like the spectrum of like shades and colors of people you're going to see is very, very broad. The spectrum of like hair textures you're going to see, all of that is very, very broad. So that was really nice. I think this is the longest time we've spent somewhere that is that diverse in terms of just like so many different like shades of like brown people, which was really cool for us.
Yeah. Other thing to note is obviously Rio is a huge tourist destination. So along with you fit in with the locals, it's just like there's going to be tourists walking around every single day, getting off the plane. So we did meet a ton of people who are just there on vacation. So as you're living your day-to-day life, you're getting to meet all people from different parts of the world. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's neat. Gotta love that.
As far as safety goes, so this is a question that came up from all of my friends and family. You're going to Rio with your kids? What? And I was concerned. In the very first few days that we got there, I didn't even want to pull my phone out. I wasn't carrying like my wallet with me. I was extremely cautious to make sure that me and the family were protected and safe. And we stayed in Leblon, which is probably the bougiest side of Rio de Janeiro. But we ventured into Copacabana, we went to Botafogo, we went to Ipanema, Lagoa, and then we even went down to Barra de Tijuca.
Yeah.
Tijuca?
I don't speak Portuguese.
So all in all, we felt safe. There are areas of the city where you feel like it's a city, right? Like you do have to keep your wits about you, make sure your kids are close. But all in all, like as long as you aren't doing anything silly, I felt relatively safe. And the people around me, I'm just seeing living freely. I didn't think that there was anything to worry about as far as safety.
Yeah, there wasn't a time, and I even was out, with the kids, without Justin. I felt completely safe. I think there's one time we were on the beach and a kid like ran up to me and like asked me what time it was, and I just kind of like whipped my phone out and showed him without thinking about it, because again, I don't speak Portuguese, so I can't tell him. And I had the thought, I was like, oh no, what if it's like a scam to snatch my phone? And the kid's just like, obrigado, and like, runs off or whatever. So there, I didn't feel concerned.
Yeah.
And again, we're not walking around with like gaudy like watches and chains and Louis bags and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that colors the experience. We also, like Justin said, we're not silly people. So we're not just like wandering up into the favelas like, ooh, what's going on? But I think, again, just like you see, it's a city. You can be in New York or LA or London or Chicago or like whatever. And there's a right side of town to be on and a wrong side of town to be on. And you just have to use your best judgment. But felt safe and welcomed in Rio.
Yeah. So if you want to get in shape, go to Rio de Janeiro, because everybody we saw there was in shape. Everybody was very fit. There's a huge fitness culture in Rio and in Brazil in general. And the food that we ate, I just felt like I was at my best, honestly.
Yeah, it's true. We got to Rio and it's like fresh fruits. And even with like, there's also a lot of just like bread and like meat in like Brazilian cuisine, but I don't know if they balance it out or if it's better quality. Because we were like dropping weight, we're walking, our skin was glowy, again, a little biased. But we did see a lot of like gyms, people working out. Again, they're like bicycling and walking everywhere. It's very much giving fit life. Like it's giving snatch body. Like it's giving, why would you come for a BBL when you can simply like exist in Rio and your body snaps into shape? So that was like really a big thing to see. And it was cool. We liked that a lot. So cost of living. This is a big one, and I'm not going to bury the lead. Rio isn't a cheap city. It's just not a cheap city to be in, especially as far as finding somewhere to rent goes. And if you're like us and you're looking for like a furnished 3-bed, 2-bath minimum sort of situation, it can get pricey.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to live in the specific zones of Rio, of like Ipanema, Leblon, Copacabana. So obviously it's going to be expensive. And then you're, of course, competing with tourists as well. So I would say that's probably the trickiest side of being in Rio is being able to, one, find a place to live, and then two, just for like everyday goods and services, there is a huge import tax that you'll pay on electronics. So they say an iPhone is like double the price in Rio. Cost of food was about average. I wouldn't say it was very affordable, but it wasn't super expensive either. So you can make it work, you can be on a budget, but you have to be a little more thrifty with that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. If you are someone who's looking for that experience of like being somewhere like very cheap, go to Medellin or somewhere else. Rio just isn't that. But, you know, one thing I will say too, like what you're paying for, you're getting good quality. Like all the food we purchased, the grocery shopping, the fruit we were eating, all of that, fantastic quality. The food was delicious. It didn't feel like because we were somewhere touristy, you're just getting like ripped off for the bare minimum. So I think at least that you can definitely appreciate.
Yeah.
We didn't put the kids in school there, but we did look at the cost of childcare, or at least the cost of the international schools. And again, I think like more expensive than the ones that we looked at in like Mexico or Colombia, but we would still be paying less than in the US for like private bilingual education. So there are some resources that we do use for cost of living before we get to a destination. Numbeo.com is definitely one of them. We'll drop that in the description below in case you want to check it out as it compares to your city or cities that you're familiar with. Personally, I think even though it's a little pricey, Rio is just such a magnificent place to be. Again, I'm biased, I know, I'm sorry. Everywhere has its downsides, but I definitely would go back soon.
We are going back. And just not even just to go back for Rio, like I want to explore all of Brazil. It's a huge country, and I think it's a great place to base and just explore different cities to see different sides of it. And so I do think you'll see more Brazil content from us here soon.
Yeah, you definitely will. Okay, if you have been to Rio or other parts of Brazil and you have questions or recommendations, drop them in the comments and we can definitely chat about it. Thanks for hanging out with us and listening to us fawn over Rio de Janeiro. We'll see y'all next time.
Next time.